I was a director working at the global head office at a Fortune 500 company outside New York City. I felt like I was really at the nerve center of the organization. When the opportunity to step into a VP role opened up in a team of a senior leader that I worked very closely with, I thought I was a shoe-in. I thought I was a front runner. I've been performing at that level. I've been recognized. I've been told that I'm doing a fantastic job. So of course, of course it's going to be mine. And I didn't get the job. And it really stung at the time because it's hard to wrap your head around why not me. But what occurred to me is that we often are so focused on being the reliable expert that we don't always make the shift into what it takes to be seen as the obvious choice for the next leader or the obvious choice for promotion. And there are two different things where coaching could have helped me and helps a lot of the clients I've worked with today is in making that shift, stepping away from what I call the expert trap, which is when you're so focused on the doing, on the executing, that you don't think about how you're being perceived as leadership material, what it takes to influence, to have impact at scale, to show up with presence and influence and authority. And I think that's the gap that coaching could have really helped me fill.
Welcome to There Is No Alternative, a podcast about entrepreneurship and leadership. I'm Tina Bou-Saba, founder of CXT Investments, where I invest in consumer brands and technology. Today, we are joined by Maharukh Dalal, founder and head coach of the Career Accelerator for Women, a coaching company with outcomes that clients can measure. We're going to have a practical, behind-the-scenes conversation on positioning, credibility, and sustainable growth when your product is human transformation. Okay, well, let's do a warm-up question to get going. Do you have a hype song?
My hype song is A Million Dreams from the movie The Greatest Showman.
I love it. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, great. Well, let's get going. You are a coach, but you haven't always been a coach. So would love to hear your journey. What were you doing before? And when did you decide that coaching was your calling?
Before becoming a coach, I had a 2-decade-long career in corporate across 4 industries and 4 different countries. I worked in finance on Wall Street. I worked in hospitality. I was in consulting for a while, and I am now a coach. I've also worked around the globe from the US to Singapore, and now, as I mentioned, I'm in London. The inflection point for me in becoming a coach was when I was working at the last organization that I was involved with. I felt that I had values around freedom and impact that I really wanted to express more fully. And so I decided to step away and more intentionally design the second half of my career. So the inflection point was when I started working with a coach myself, a HBS alum, a few years ahead of us, Tina, and I decided that I wanted to be really intentional about shaping the next phase of my career. And so we started by creating a human Venn diagram. So the Ikigai process, which in Japanese means the reason for being. And so we created these 4 circles around what I love doing, what I'm good at, what the world needs, and what I can get paid for. And at the intersection of those 4 circles was when I had this light bulb moment that what I really want to do is help others achieve their goals and have the impact that I can now have by marrying together my 2 decades in corporate with the desire to help others in achieving their goals.
I love that. So once you had that discovery, what were the first things that you did to get going with the business?
Yeah, at first it was funny because in retrospect, I said, how many years of experience do I have? And I have, a Harvard Business School MBA, but why didn't I do this, the right way? But hey, we learn as we go. So the first thing I did was actually get trained as a coach. And I wanted to really develop all of the tools, the skills, the modalities around coaching. So I came at it from a service provider mindset rather than an entrepreneurial business mindset around what is the need? What is the, blue ocean opportunity rather than let me just develop the skills I need in order to coach people when who knew what people even needed to be coached in, or was there a need for more coaches in the world? So the first thing was really developing those skills when it should have been thinking like an entrepreneur and building a business.
I think that makes sense though, right? First thinking about how do you create value and then how do you capture it?
Yeah, and I think that thank you for encouraging me back in the day. But I think if I had kind of been a little bit more perhaps balanced in the approach, if not being and doubling down so much so early on just becoming the coach and also being a little bit more, forward thinking in how do, what is involved in running a business? How does one create that, demand generation engine? How do I then service these clients, etc.? I was so single-mindedly focused on making that pivot, on reinventing myself from, corporate leader to coach, that the business side of it just fell by the wayside.
That is really interesting. Okay, well, I have a couple of questions I want to ask you about that, but one of them is, can you talk about maybe an experience that you had as a corporate leader that got you thinking about, the challenges and where coaching could come in to address?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had many such. So I was a director working at the time at the global head office at a Fortune 500 company outside New York City. And I had high visibility in the organization. I was meeting with senior management. I was in conversation and running things at a global level, cross functionally. So I felt like I was really at the nerve center of the organization. When the opportunity to step into a VP role opened up in a team of a senior leader that I worked very closely with, I thought I was a shoe-in. I thought I was a front runner. I've been performing at that level. I've been recognized. I've been told that I'm doing a fantastic job. So of course, of course it's going to be mine. And I didn't get the job. And it really stung at the time because it's hard to wrap your head around why not me. Um, and I didn't have language for them that I have now. But what occurred to me is that we often are so focused on being the reliable expert, the trusted person, that we don't always make the shift into what it takes to be seen as the obvious choice for the next leader or the obvious choice for promotion. And there are two different things. So I think to answer your question, where coaching could have helped me and helps a lot of the clients I've worked with today is in making that shift, stepping away from what I call the expert trap, which is when you're so focused on the doing, on the executing, on being the reliable person, on being the stalwart, the torch carrier, that you don't think about how you're being perceived as leadership material, what it takes to influence, to have impacted scale, to show up with presence and influence and authority. And I think that's the gap that coaching could have really helped me fill.
That's really interesting. Okay, so tell us about what does an executive coach do? What is an executive coach?
The best description I can share is the person that helps you get to from where you are today to where you want to go. And that can mean different things to different people. In my world and in my context, that helps leaders who are at a certain level today play bigger, show up differently so that they can achieve their next level of success, whether that's a promotion, whether that's the next leadership role inside or outside their organization, whether that's having more influence with their teams, showing up with more authority. So it's really closing that gap between the here and the future. What does that translate into tactically? It's about someone who can hold that big, bold, beautiful vision for your life, that can champion you along that journey, but equally someone who can hold you accountable to your goals, that can push back on you, that can challenge you and say, hey, you said that this is what you want to do, but what you're doing today and how you're showing up is not consistent with what you've just said are your goals. Or, you know, these are your values. but the decisions you're now making don't seem to, sync up with those. So it's being able to call you out for where you might be not acting in accordance with your goals and values, but also championing you and cheering you on in a collaborative, co-created space.
That makes a ton of sense. How do you work with clients?
I work with clients in a couple of different ways. I have a group coaching program called the Career Accelerator for Women. And think of that like a boot camp, right? Where you have a specific goal. Your objective may be, I want to lose a certain amount of weight at the end of this time frame, or I want to, be able to run 10K, or I want to, whatever else fitness goals I might have. And so the Career Accelerator is built in a similar way, where there are very specific outcomes that my clients achieve around career advancement in a defined amount of time, with the right support structure from me and a community of like-minded, ambitious professionals. The other way I work with clients is more bespoke. It's through one-to-one coaching for, mid to senior level corporate leaders that may perhaps want a little bit more bespoke of an approach to coaching, that may not want to do it as part of a community, that might have specific goals, that might have, for confidentiality reasons, the need to be, in a more one-to-one environment. And I keep the same arc of coaching as we have in the Career Accelerator around the vision clarity path, the confidence cultivation journey, and accelerating your authority. But I do that with them one-on-one at a slightly different pace, where it's a little bit of prefix and a little bit of a la carte, so they can, take things at their own pace.
How long will you typically work with clients?
I typically work with clients for 6 to 12 months.
Wow.
Initially, our engagement is for 6 months. We meet on a biweekly basis, which is the right cadence, because a lot of the growth and transformation happens between sessions. And so that's the right amount of time to go away, reflect, do some inquiry, do some, homework, put it in practice, and then come back, share learnings and takeaways. Almost always we continue way beyond those initial 6 months, because we continue to build on the momentum. The first 3 months is a lot about breakthroughs and insights. The next 3 months is about really bedding in some of those new behaviors and pattern shifts. And then, the 6 months beyond that is continuing to just ensure that you have momentum, that these behaviors continue to set in. And as you well know, things change, right? What you think, it's never one and done. And so I support them in evolving and growing to meet the challenges that they might be faced with in their organizations. So that then it becomes kind of more circumstantial and contextual to what's happening around them.
And do you find that there are strong patterns in the types of professional challenges that your clients are dealing with, and what are they?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what gave birth to the Career Accelerator program. I didn't start out intending to be a coach for, women looking to rise in corporate, but I very quickly noticed pattern after pattern where like attracts like. So I was attracting, people like me that were ambitious high performers, but were stuck in being able to advance to the next level of their success, despite their strong results. So the pattern that I often see, Tina, is around the challenge of naming it and claiming it. And what I mean by that is naming the ambition, naming that next level role, naming the next step that you want in your career, and having a really clear vision for why you want that, right? Because that you have to align that with your goal for your life. So a lot of time is spent upfront dealing with the kind of the naming it and understanding the why. But then the second part is claiming, right? So don't just get really crystal clear on it and then keep it to yourself, but go out there and articulate your goals and your desire and your vision to the people who can help you get to that goal. And so claiming it is about removing any ambiguity that this is the goal. Tina wants to become, senior vice president of global sales for North America, and then being able to articulate, why that's important to you, evidence that you are, eminently qualified for that, and enrolling them. This is the most important part, enrolling them in their ability to help you get there. what do you think I need to do to get to this level over the next 6 to 12 months? So I think the pattern was around them working really hard and having excellent results. But to get to the next level, you have to signal clear ambition and be able to signpost to that, but also go out there and then develop that advocacy architecture to create, joint partnership and ownership in that path.
Really, really interesting. So, okay, so question for you. What do you think makes a great executive coach?
I love this question because I've actually worked with a few and I've had to fire a few along the way and, no fault of theirs, but it comes down to the right fit. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, right? And the pieces have to exactly fit into place. So I am really selective about the people that I work with. My filter, and I know you didn't ask about ideal client, I asked about ideal executive coach and what we should look for, but I'll come to that. I think when a coach has really clear criteria of whom they want to work with and whom they can help, then you can self-select. So being decisive, being coachable, being resourceful are three of the things that I look for in my clients. And as a result, I'm the right coach for people that want to take action, that have a sense of urgency, that have a clear why and why now, right? I may not be everyone's cup of tea, and I don't want to be. So I can only ask that question from my own perspective. From my perspective, what makes a great executive coach is a couple of things. One is the ability to hold that vision for you. I mean, I've had coaches that have looked at me and my goals and said, you think you can do that? And that's not the right coach for me because they're not holding that big, beautiful, bold vision that I have for myself. So for me, that's really important. Two is someone who can dance with you because things change all the time. You come to me wanting to get coached in, in this goal, and then life happens, and then, this becomes the issue. To be able to kind of go through life's journey with your clients and dance with them in that moment is really important. But I also think the ability to challenge and not take everything at face value and to be able to ask powerful questions and hold them accountable to their goals. And then the final piece I would say is someone who can be present to what's unfolding for their client without necessarily giving advice, right? Coaching is not about giving advice, and advice doesn't work for a few reasons. One is because it may be the wrong advice. Two, it may be the right advice for me, but the wrong advice for you. And three, if you just give them the advice, it's not going to stick because it hasn't come from them. So those for me are some of the components of, what makes a really good executive coach.
To what extent do you observe a blurring of the professional and personal in your work with clients, or is that not even the right way to think about it? And what I mean is, how people show up at work, their professional goals is obviously, deeply connected to their personal life. Like, how do you think about that when you're working with people?
That's a wonderful question because when you first asked it, I thought you meant how do I keep kind of my person out of it? How do we not go down the personal, relationship, friendship path? But I am not so particular about what they bring or don't bring into the coaching relationship because you are coaching the whole person. We are the sum total of all our parts, right? We can't compartmentalize, the working Tina from the mom Tina, from the wife or the daughter and the entrepreneur, right? We are one person. Our values are our values. Like when we walk out the door, we take those values with us. When we walk in the door, the same values come up with us. So, what I tend to think about is I'd never say, well, we're not going to talk about this or this is off limits or, we're not going to do, couples therapy here. And we never do therapy. But if they want to talk about an issue they're having with, relationship with a child or with their partner or with everything is welcome. They get to decide I am in service to my client's goals. And even though our understanding is that we're going to be working towards this goal, that goal might shift. And so for me, everything's welcome and it might change, session to session, but I'm in service to their goals. And unless we clear that, we can't make progress, on the other side.
Okay, I understand. So now these are trusting relationships and you're bringing a lot to your work with your clients. How do you maintain your energy and resilience in this type of work?
Yeah, and it's a good one. And because as you can imagine and understand as an entrepreneur yourself, like, the wheels can just keep turning all day long. And
Yes.
the boundaries are a little bit more fungible. And but for me, the way I think about it is in order for me to be the best possible coach for my clients, I need to be the best possible person for me so that I can pour that energy into helping my clients. Part of it is just, logistics, right? Being a mom, having a dog, the day has a natural rhythm. There's the school run that bookends the day, the morning, the evening, taking the dog out for a walk, getting dinner out on time. So I feel having these kind of natural points in the day does provide a lot of structure and boundaries that don't have to necessarily push to enforce, but they get decided for me. And but even when I don't have that necessarily, I think that I really believe in the concept of you need to slow down to speed up, right? If we're always going at 180 miles an hour, we're going to crash and burn. Um, and so I'm very intentional about kind of refueling by doing things that I love, whether that's, watching some silly Netflix that's going to get me completely distracted, or, being out in nature, or, just making myself a cup of tea in the middle of it all. So I kind of have this really intentional design in my day around ensuring that I'm feeling, as great as I can so that I can kind of pour into my client's cup. And but it's hard to keep the mental wheels, stop spinning because I'm always looking to think about, how do I do this? How do I improve at this? And how do I pivot to that? And how do I level up on this? But I try not to necessarily let it impact me on the day to day.
I can definitely relate to that. And I like your point around they're less fungible, like the lines when you're an entrepreneur, because there's always things you can be doing, always, more ideas. But so let's talk more about that. What have you found to be most effective in building your coaching business?
Yeah, I think that as an entrepreneur, as you were saying, it's so easy to just get sucked into any which direction, right? Like you said, so many ideas. You can just be going down one rabbit hole after another. And so the lens that I try to have, or the filter I try to have, is, at the start of the day, asking myself one question, which is, what's going to move the needle today? Right? Because we can all get sucked into brand design, logos, and websites, and fonts and colors. And guess what? Nobody cares. Your clients are not choosing to work with you or buy from you because of your logo or your website, or it's about what you can do for them. I mean, that all can come later. I mean, it's lovely to have all of that, squared away. But if you spend 80% of time on that kind of stuff, which is easy to do as an entrepreneur, you're not actually moving the needle on bringing clients in the door and providing them a great service and continuing to generate business. So how have I found I'm able to do that? I think asking that question, what's going to move the needle, is one. Two is, how can I always be focused on building systems and structures? Because that's at the end of the day what entrepreneurship is. If you think you're going to become an entrepreneur and do that one thing you're good at that you love doing, you're fooling yourself, right? I mean, coaching is probably, a small fraction of what I do as a business owner. And the rest of the time is on, building the systems that scale in order for the business to scale. And so thinking about, what is it that will allow me to move the needle from what I'm doing today to where I envision growing my business. And that was the question that made me create the Creator Accelerator. That, you can't scale by doing one-to-one coaching alone because you're limited to one person and the number of hours in the day. But when you have a cohort-based program, that's a much more scalable model. And then to bring in IP, your intellectual property, and leverage technology and media to bring those learnings at scale is going to, that completely moved the needle for me. So I would say asking the question and then developing the systems and structures to deliver on that vision.
So tell us about your IP, and I'm specifically referring to your claim framework, which is terrific.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I never set out trying to come up with a framework called claim, but I love the notion of claiming your seat at the table, which is part of, the name it to claim it revelation that I've had in looking back in my career. So claim is essentially a framework of 5 steps, which is baked into my Career Accelerator program. And it's also part of the diagnostic that I do when clients are interested in working together. So the C is around clarity. And that's the starting point, because unless you have clarity for the vision that you have for your life, nothing else is going to have any juice in it, right? So starting with that vision, what do I want my life to look like 20, 30 years down the road? Very simply, where am I? Who am I with? What am I doing? Who's around me? And then from there, looking at the 12-month goal and saying, what do I want to be doing 12 months from now that is in alignment with that vision? And what does that mean for me today? What do I start, continue doing today? So that's C, that's clarity. L is liberation, which is a little broader in that this is about your internal operating system and understanding your thoughts, your beliefs, your self-talk, and how they're influencing how you're showing up in the world. What's your relationship with fear? How do you think about good fear versus bad fear, which is rumination? Are you playing big? Are you cultivating a bulletproof mindset? So it's about the tools and frameworks that allow you to play bigger in your life, right? Which is the common thread and pattern that I see across my clients, no matter what they've achieved in their life. The A is around accelerating your authority, which is building your personal brand statement. And the reason this is critical is if you're not feeling that sense of authority for yourself, it's going to be hard for others to feel your authority. So we build your sense of authority by having your personal brand statement where you have your goals, your strengths, your values, but also your saboteurs, so that you're aware of what's holding you back and looking at the impact you've already had. So when you look at this personal brand statement of who you are and what you've done, you feel amazing because you have this clear blueprint of where you are and what you can continue to do for others. The I is influence, which is building your circle of influence. You don't need to go it alone. You can design a system of advocates, just like companies have, different committees on their board. They have the audit committee, the compensation committee, and the finance committee. As individuals, we can have these groups of people on our own personal board of directors. We can have sponsors and mentors and challengers or cheerleaders or allies. And it's about creating that system of influence and calling them by their roles so that you don't have to label them as a mentor or sponsor, but filling those kind of committees, right, with the right people so they can amplify your efforts. So they can say, I know what Tina can do. I've seen her at her best. This is what she can do for your company. You need to talk to her. Do you know who that person is for you? And if you don't, that's a body of work you can go out and do. And then N, which is mastery, is really around what I've alluded to earlier, which is the ability to ask for and advocate for what you want, right? The ability to say, I want to get to this role, or I would like to have this position, and making a case for it and not being afraid to negotiate, not being afraid to advocate for yourself, which is not a natural thing that we're trained or, taught. But it's just that kind of mastery. It's self-mastery, but also the mastery of being able to ask and negotiate and advocate. So that's claim.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So who should sign up for your Career Accelerator? Who is it for?
Career Accelerator is for ambitious women who want to advance in their career and are at a mid to senior level in corporate. So directors, vice presidents, senior vice presidents, anyone who knows that they have more to give, that want to continue to rise and grow and meet and fulfill their potential.
When you look at your business over, let's say, the next 5 years, what do you envision?
That gets me very excited. I envision two things. I envision continuing to work increasingly with corporate, where I am, running corporate workshops and doing talks and keynote talks for companies. And so doing more of that, but also becoming a speaker. So I'm actually working on a TEDx talk as we speak around the idea of how to do hard things and how that is something that is about designing your identity as someone who does hard things so that all the actions can follow. I love being able to have impact at scale. While I love the coaching one-to-one part of the business where I can have impact on an individual level, I also think that being able to do both, having that one-to-one impact, but also having impact at scale as a speaker is what's getting me really excited right now. And that's my vision for the future.
I love that. And I love the idea of seeing oneself as someone who does hard things.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly,
beautiful.
Tina. And yeah, that's something that, I've been kind of playing around with this idea of what does it take to do hard things? And most people think it's about willpower and motivation and that they have a discipline problem and I just need to push harder. It's about more effort. But actually, it's none of that because that is only you beating yourself up for not doing more, right? And that's just push factor. But when you can design your identity as someone that does the thing that you want to do, whatever that goal is, and envision yourself as that, all your actions align with that. You make decisions by what would the person who does this thing do? They would choose to do this, not that, right? And so your trade-offs become a lot easier because you're acting from the identity of someone who's achieving the goal that you've set out for yourself.
That is so cool. Really, really, really powerful. I can see why I can see why people love working with you as a coach. And I can also see how having someone to keep you accountable for things, as an executive, having someone like you can be so impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a secret weapon. And I say that from personal experience. I don't work with one coach. I work with a team of coaches for different aspects of, my business, my own personal growth. And I liken it to taking the slow, long, painful, winding country road versus driving on the highway. Like, why would you choose to meander down the slow, painful road and take your time? And who knows whether you're ever going to reach your destination versus you can have someone help you and keep you accountable and hold that vision for you and keep you going and show you the way, and you will get there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Maharukh, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I'm going to ask you one fun parting question that I ask many of our guests. What is your desert island product, whether it's a wellness product, a beauty product, a favorite snack? What's your desert island item?
This is a very easy one for me, and it's one I've been using since, HBS, and we're coming up on our 20-year reunion, so it's been by my side for 20 years. It's Smith's Rose Lip Balm. You know the little ones in the tin container? Oh my
Yes.
goodness. I have one like in different parts of my house, but above the kitchen counter, by my bedside table, in my bag. And it's just part of my identity now.
I love it. I love it. Amazing. That's a great one. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, your advice, your amazing energy, and your vision with us. This has been a terrific conversation. Super grateful for you making the time.
My absolute pleasure. I loved chatting with you, Tina. Thank you for inviting me and great seeing you.
Thank you. Great to see you too.
Take care. Bye.
If you liked this episode, follow us on Spotify and check us out on YouTube and Instagram, where we share highlights from our conversations.